part of the plan is to keep these markets up, to keep the peace until they decide that it's time to pull the plug and let the whole thing, or force the whole thing to come down. Markets are 100% manipulated. And the way that they've kept, if you want to call it conservative, God-fearing, law-abiding people under control, is that they've kept these markets levitated. So the average person looks at, I don't know what they call them in the UK, but in the US, the retirement accounts are called 401ks. Yep. People look at their 401k and their balance is $1 million, $5 million, $10 million, whatever. And their thought process is, well, yeah, all this stuff is going on, but I'm okay because I have my 401k account. I'm doing fine. The value of my house, if I sold that, it'd be a huge windfall. So by manipulating these markets, by keeping these markets levitated, they've kept the conservatives from revolting. And they will absolutely pull the plug on markets. Once they do that, then you will see the law-abiding people get completely pissed, and you will see riots, and you will see, I guess you could say, societal warfare. So it's just understand that the lies, the manipulation, it's not just what we're talking about as far as from a societal level. Part of the plan is to keep these markets up, to keep the peace until they decide that it's time to pull the plug and let the whole thing, or force the whole thing to come down. And I mean, that brings us to the Great Taking, which, I mean, that is absolutely a plan. If you put those laws on the books, and those laws have been put on the books all over the Western world, where your broker, your bank, your insurance company, if they're failing, they can take what you think are your assets, but they're on your institution's balance sheet. They can take your assets to save their bacon. So it's an absolute plan. And anyone who thinks that the Great Taking is just, it's made up or whatever, that's not even possible. These laws are on the books, and they've been on the books for nearly 10 years. And what that does is, when your broker or your bank or whatever takes your money, you have zero legal recourse. Jim Sinclair originally coined the phrase, "get out of the system." He ran a clearing firm, understood how it works, and back in, I think, 2004, 2005, started telling people, get out of the system. Keep low bank balances, get your stock certificates in hand, pretty much stay away from insurance products, and put your hard-earned savings in gold and silver, not at a bank, not within the banking system. Either hold it yourself or do it through a private non-bank vault, because gold and silver are the only monies, as you mentioned, have no counterparty risk. And really what that means is they can't be inflated, they can't be printed, and they cannot go bankrupt. You cannot wake up tomorrow morning and find out, the company created some product that kills people and now the stock's worth zero. Gold and silver have been money for 5,000 years. They cannot bankrupt. If you get it out of the system, you're out of the system. And we're absolutely headed for central bank digital currencies all over the world. And just for the two of us doing this conversation, we would have our accounts shut off by this afternoon.
Yeah.
So just understand that owning gold and silver creates liberty for you. It creates options, creates choices. It's wealth that cannot be denied to you. People went to their safe deposit boxes and they were emptied. I mean, if you had gold in your safe deposit box, it was gone. If you put gold in a safety deposit box now, you got to be out of your mind because it's going to be taken. In the state of California, they raided a safety deposit box company and took everything, and then people had to prove that it was theirs. Now the courts reversed that, and the bulk of those assets have been returned to people. But the way they did it was, we're taking it, and you can have it back if you can prove how you got it, because it could be drug money, whatever. I mean, that's completely bogus. You've got to get it out of their reach. Well, it's fairly easy to store a large amount of dollars or euros or whatever in gold. I mean, a 400-ounce bar now is $1 million.
Millions.
I mean, go back 20 years ago, and you were looking at $100,000. So now it's $1 million. And I mean, to store 2,000, 5,000 ounces on your property, I mean, that's certainly doable. Now, silver's a different story, but yeah, you can hide gold. You can dig holes on your property. Put gold in your basement, put it in a potted plant, whatever. You can hide that, because now you're talking about a large currency amount per ounce. And while we're talking about this, I noticed that James Turk was just talking about his gold overvalued. Gold is so undervalued, it's not even funny. People are thinking, oh my gosh, gold's $2,500 an ounce. It's too high. I'm not going to buy it. Well, the only question in my mind is how many zeros get put on the end of that 2,500 before this is all done. I do want to mention, and I talked about this a little over a couple of years ago when we first had an inverted yield curve. Understand that we've had recessions without an inverted yield curve, but every time we've had an inverted yield curve, after it uninverts, we go into recession. And we have now experienced the longest inverted yield curve ever. So uninverting, I mean, this is going to be a disaster, and we're in the process of uninverting now. The 2s and 30s are basically flat. The 210s, they're still inverted. Now, as far as you're talking about the real economy, yeah, there will be instant hyperinflation, and a better way for the average person to think about that is an instant cut. 30%, 50%, who knows, 80, 90% drop in your standard of living. That's the first thing. Now let's look at the financial aspect of it. When the BRICS come out with their currency, what that's going to do is it's basically going to shut the credit spigot off to the United States. And you're basically going to have the Federal Reserve directly monetizing any and all Treasury debt that they need to borrow. And they're borrowing $1 trillion every 3 to 4 months. So, and let's go back a little bit. Isn't it convenient that the Fed and the Treasury were combined a couple years, 3 years back? So now they're in-house. So let's look at it as a pair of pants. It's the right-hand pocket borrowing from the left-hand pocket. So from a financial standpoint, you're going to see that this was entirely a Ponzi scheme from day one. And the model, the best way to describe the model, it's the never pay model. Because all you have to do is create more dollars to make payment. And it doesn't cost you anything to create more dollars. So you're paying with something that's free for you to create. Thus, you never truly settle the trade. With a real currency, like the BRICS currency, or any currency that's backed by gold or some type of commodity, you're giving a currency that's real for something that is real. And that's the reason the BRICS even started to begin with, is because the world was getting fed up of giving real products for nothing, for pieces of paper or digital, digital amounts of dollars, euros, yen, what have you. I would just say if central banks all over the world have been actively hoarding gold, there's a reason for that. And all you have to do is look at what their holdings are. And the average central bank worldwide holds maybe just shy of 60% of the reserves in dollars. And they know that that's going to implode. But if you revalued gold, I mean, pick a number to 10,000, 25,000, 50,000, who knows what the number is. But if you revalue gold much, much higher as the dollar implodes, then what happens to their balance sheet? The gold will blow up enough to fill the black hole created by the dollar value evaporating. So really, what they're doing is they're front running what they know is going to happen. If anybody gives you a firm number as to where gold's going, they're full of crap. I mean, they're making it up.
Yeah.
You mentioned sanctions, and you also mentioned derivatives. First off, let's go back to October last year. The United States said we are going to confiscate 300 billion of Russia's treasuries. That was the low in gold. That was roughly $1,700 an ounce. Now we're just north of 2,500. That is almost a 50% move in the value of gold in less than a year. That's completely unheard of. And that's simply because nations worldwide have said, or have thought to themselves and acted by buying gold, because they're thinking, well, if they could do this to Russia, the most powerful military on the planet, they could do that to us without a problem, without even batting an eye. So that's the reason gold has rallied so strongly from October. You also mentioned derivatives. And I guess with this part, I'm going to ask you a question because I don't really know the answer. 2-3 weeks ago, you saw the Japanese market, based on a 0.15% raise in interest rates, the first raise in 20 years or whatever, that market imploded 25% in 3 days. And I looked at that and I said, well, this has got to be it, because there's got to be margin calls all over the world in all kinds of markets. And I mean, even if you say that the yen carry trade is 20 trillion, which is what the official number is, that's on books. That doesn't include OTC derivatives, which could be 10 times that. Mm. And almost immediately, probably 3 or 4 days after that happened, people are running around saying, oh, well, the carry trade, they've cleaned up 75% of it. That has to be complete. It took over 20, almost 30 years to put that carry trade in place. And you're telling me that in a 3-day period of time, 75% of it was erased and no one died? There was not one death, not one financial death. Something really stinks. I mean, we found out in 2010 that the Federal Reserve had lent 17 trillion all over the world to save the system. We didn't know it at the time, but we found out after the fact. Mm. How much money do you think central banks all over the world put up to keep this thing from imploding and shove it under the rug? I mean, I'm asking you your thoughts on this, because I don't see how it's even possible that what happened did not kill multiple companies and create a domino effect. understand that the Fed has a negative net worth now. I mean, the equity that they had, and the last I saw 2 years ago, was they had a $65 billion of equity, and that was holding up trillions and trillions of assets and a couple quadrillion worth of derivatives. Not only do they have a negative net worth, but they also have negative cash flow now. I read a few weeks back that for the last, 3 months or 6 months, their cash flow has actually been negative. So, I mean, how does that work? You have a central bank that, it doesn't matter whether they have reserves or not, but they can create 5, 10, 20, $50 trillion to lend around to keep things going. I mean, this is a complete joke. And also, just one more comment on the yen carry trade. It is absolutely free money. And understand, when somebody gets free money, they're going to do stupid things with it. And that's what they've done.